Welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. Stay informed with quick, easy-to-listen summaries of our latest articles, perfect for when you're on the go. No reading required. Subscribe for free at mercola.com for the latest health insights.
What if the stories you've heard about vaccines, the triumphs and flawless safety record, left out a hidden chapter that explains today's surge in neurological conditions? Hello, and welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. I'm Ethan Foster, and in the next few minutes, Alara Sky and I will explore the documented, yet largely forgotten, history of vaccine-related brain injuries spanning more than 2 centuries.
Thanks, Ethan. The written record begins with smallpox vaccinations in the early 1800s. Physicians regularly reported post-vaccinal encephalomyelitis, severe brain inflammation, with mortality approaching 35% in infants. As case reports accumulated, medical leaders argued that public confidence mattered more than uncomfortable truths. The result was a strategic silence that allowed the same patterns of injury to repeat with each new vaccine rollout.
That silence set the template. When typhoid shots were deployed to troops during World War I, neurologists described Landry's paralysis, what we now call Guillain-Barré syndrome, in healthy young soldiers. A 1954 review still found more than 50 typhoid-linked nerve injuries, yet military authorities concealed the data to maintain vaccination compliance on the front lines.
Yellow fever vaccination campaigns showed an even clearer danger signal. One 1943 production lot caused encephalitis in 1.65% of recipients, and World Health Organization summaries documented 83 brain injury deaths in Nigeria and over 250 cases in Brazil. The pattern was unmistakable: hot lots followed by clusters of neurologic devastation. Yet public messaging continued to insist these injections were universally safe.
In the civilian sphere, diphtheria and pertussis combinations proved hazardous to children. A Dallas diphtheria outbreak in 1919 ended with 8% mortality among those receiving contaminated antitoxin, while the pertussis component alone prompted seizures, collapse, and fatal encephalitis. One 1961 study of 1,700 infants documented 40 rapid-onset reactions, including persistent screaming, an early sign of brain irritation.
Fast forward to the television era. In 1982, NBC aired footage of infants who lost speech and motor function within days of the DPT shot, a condition labeled post-pertussis encephalopathy. The Donahue program hosted an open debate in 1985. But that was the final broadcast discussion before pharmaceutical pressure closed mainstream platforms to dissenting voices.
Diagnostic labels also shifted. Earlier literature called injured children mentally retarded, when that term was replaced in federal law by intellectual disability in 2010, epidemiologists noted that over 1/4 of previously retarded cases were relabeled as autism. By altering vocabulary, public health officials could claim autism's rise was merely improved recognition, sidestepping environmental triggers such as vaccination.
The 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act quietly confirmed specific neurologic harms, encephalopathy after MMR among them, yet only token additions have been made since, despite the introduction of a dozen new shots. Research showing increased chronic illness in heavily vaccinated children lost publication venues, and clinicians who persisted, such as an Oregon pediatrician, lost their licenses.
Microstrokes supply a unifying mechanism. Vaccines can tilt blood zeta potential, causing red and white cells to clump and obstruct capillaries. Autopsies from smallpox, yellow fever, and rabies. Victims described scattered microhemorrhages, cranial nerve palsies, and edema, hallmarks of vascular blockage. These injuries often occurred without any live pathogen present, implicating the injection itself rather than infection.
When blood supply to facial nerves is interrupted, subtle asymmetries develop. Photographer Forrest Moretti compared portraits from the late 19th century with modern school photos and found today's children display far more drooping eyelids and uneven smiles, physical footprints of silent microvascular injury. Studies also show up to 30% of autistic children suffer seizures, further linking vascular insult to neurodevelopmental harm.
Historical data on rabies vaccination drives the point home. Early Pasteur institutes struggled to balance potency with safety. Paralysis rates ran as high as 16%, with Guillain-Barré fatalities at 30%. Researchers warned that constitutionally sensitive individuals, those with allergies or prior neurologic issues, were at greater risk. Their advice to delay or exempt vulnerable recipients was dismissed to protect mandates.
Smallpox again illustrates institutional denial. A 1956 German analysis found that switching to animal-derived vaccine material increased encephalitis 4 to 6-fold, yet public campaigns never paused. Wilson compiled 2,398 cases with a 34% fatality rate, but textbooks summarized smallpox inoculation as an unqualified triumph, omitting the human cost that accompanied eradication.
Medical literature once urged caution. A 1953 DPT review concluded it was unwise to immunize any child with pre-existing conditions suggesting susceptibility. Modern policy flips that guidance. Almost no condition, including previous convulsions, qualifies for a medical exemption. The burden of proof is shifted onto parents who must demonstrate causality after injury, a nearly impossible task once clinical silence sets in.
Suppressing debate also blocks science. Placebo-controlled trials are branded unethical, yet without them, signals cannot be quantified. Datasets comparing vaccinated and unvaccinated cohorts were destroyed after legal teams accessed them. Meanwhile, chronic childhood illness, eczema, asthma, autoimmune disorders climbed in tandem with expanding vaccine schedules, mirroring Wilson's prediction that repeated immune provocation drives systemic disease.
Public health messaging still relies on the 1 in a million slogan, but empirical evidence contradicts it. The 1976 swine flu program was halted when Guillain-Barré surfaced at a rate of 1 in 100,000. Yet a practicing colleague reported 6% of patients developed the condition. Underreporting and diagnostic substitution mask the real incidence even today.
From a systems perspective, each wave of injury follows the same script: alarming clinical reports, official dismissal, rebranding of symptoms, and eventual erasure from common memory. Because few professionals study original case literature, the cycle restarts with the next product. Wilson hoped that documenting past disasters would force safer design, but concealment prevailed instead.
Historical data from mid-century polio campaigns is particularly revealing. Papers published between 1950 and 1956 documented hundreds of paralysis cases that emerged preferentially in limbs where unrelated injections had just been given. One epidemiologist, the same who established modern causality criteria, calculated that recent vaccination doubled polio risk in children. By 1956, a British committee conceded that 13% of infant paralysis was injection-related.
Wilson also emphasized immune suppression. Several vaccines temporarily lowered white cell activity, allowing dormant infections to flare. Clinicians observed children who, after routine shots, developed severe measles or tuberculosis they would have otherwise resisted. The phenomenon parallels modern reports of latent viruses reawakening after vaccination, underscoring that altered immune balance, not just direct toxicity, contributes to neurologic decline.
The stakes are personal. If your child collapses after vaccination, the injury book on hot lots, microstrokes, and cranial nerve damage explains why, but hospitals rarely acknowledge it. Without awareness, families confront an opaque system that labels them hysterical while refusing to investigate obvious temporal links.
That brings us to our actionable insight. You have the right and responsibility to request full lot numbers, scrutinize manufacturer safety data, and evaluate historical risk patterns before consenting. Archive early case studies, because modern search engines increasingly censor them. Knowledge is your primary safeguard against repeating forgotten tragedies.
Your practical challenge is to spend 15 minutes this week reading one pre-1970 medical paper on vaccine-induced encephalitis or paralysis. As you absorb first-hand accounts, ask yourself whether today's assurances differ more in language than in underlying biology. By reclaiming history, you empower informed choices for yourself and your loved ones.
Thank you for watching Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.